Bhagavad Gita. So Bhagavad Gita is a portion of Mahabharata. It's the middle portion where Krishna is instructing Arjuna. And the rest is Mahabharata. It's the history of Greater India. And the Bhagavad Gita is the essence in terms of teachings. Because in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says he comes for 3 reasons, and one of those 3 reasons is Dharma Sangstha Pranarthaya, to reestablish principles of Dharma. So he does that through his teachings in Bhagavad Gita, in simple terms. And where Bhagavad Gita ends is where Srimad-Bhagavatam begins. Bhagavad Gita ends with Krishna's final instruction. All other varieties of Dharma are subordinate to this one principle, that is, Mam Ekam Sharanam, surrender to me alone. And starting from that point, what does that look like? The surrender to Krishna alone life. That's Srimad-Bhagavatam. So Bhagavad Gita is spoken by Krishna and Bhagavatam is spoken about Krishna, a life of devotion to Krishna. And there are a number of topics, 10 principal topics that are discussed in Srimad-Bhagavatam, part of which we'll be discussing in 2 evenings from now. There's 10 principal topics. And the essence of those topics are presented in the first canto, which we discussed 2 days ago. So what we're doing here is there's a group of people that have a little reading group, multiple reading groups, and in the course of time they developed interest in Srimad-Bhagavatam. They received Srimad-Bhagavatam in their home, had a little installation of Srimad-Bhagavatam in receiving Krishna in their home in his literature form, and then began reading groups. So many have completed through Canto 2 of the 12 cantos. So we're having a little celebration. Yay, we completed Canto 2. Let's move on to Canto 3, kind of thing. So the first 2 evenings, this is the third, is we're now beginning Canto 2. Canto 1 ends with Maharaj Parikshit had a misfortune. He was cursed to die in 7 days by the son of a Brahmin who knew how to use Brahminical mantras and Brahminical powers. He cursed the king to die because he made an offense to his father, which wasn't nice, but it didn't deserve death penalty. But he used his Brahminical power to utter a curse. He should die in 7 days. So the king accepted the curse. He could have done something, but he accepted the curse. He turned the kingdom over to his son. Janamejaya became the next son. So the Pandavas, headed by Pandu, then Yudhishthir, then their grandson Parikshit. So now Parikshit's handing over the kingdom to the next king, Janamejaya. And he goes to the bank of the river Ganges, not with his crown and royal garments. He's wearing a mendicant's cloth. And the sages of the kingdom are invited to come and instruct him what are his duties now that he's about to die. And in their midst appears this 16-year-old looking Sukadeva Goswami, son of Vyas. And they want to hear from him. So that's the opening of Canto 1. Excuse me, the closing of Canto 1 is King Parikshit asks two questions, and then the Bhagavatam is responding to those two questions, in one sense. One question is, what's the duty of the person who is about to die? And who is there that isn't about to die? I mean, he's going to die in 7 days. We don't know when, but we're about to die. So how to prepare yourselves to meet that inevitable? First question. Second question is, what is that subject matter that one should always hear, chant, and remember? Shrotavya kirtitavyascha dhyeya pujascha nityada. That's subject matter. Subject matter is topics of Krishna. That's Bhagavatam. So that's where the canto ends. And now we're at the beginning of Canto 2. And there's some exchange at the beginning. So this is subtitled Essential Questions, Eloquent Answers. There's Maharaj Parikshit seated before Shukadev. Now, Parikshit is a powerful king. Parikshit was a celebrated person even before he was born, because he was saved from a Brahmastra weapon by Krishna himself. Krishna checked the Brahmastra of Ashvatthama, and the child in the womb of his mother, Uttara, was saved. So he was a celebrated person, and then many things happened. He was an exalted and celebrated, virtuous, powerful king. And he's about to die. So Shukadev is just a teenager, but he's being honored by, as you see in this little line drawing, there's some very beautiful paintings, but there's Narada with his Veena, and Vyasadev, Shukadev's father, is in the audience, and many great, great personalities from all over the kingdom are there. And essential questions, paraphrased, how to and how to not live, and how to leave. Those same questions I mentioned, carrying over from Canto 1. So this is where Canto 2 begins. Shukadev Goswami responds to these questions. But before he speaks, we're going to hear some nice introductory sessions. That's Shukadev Goswami appreciates these questions asked by the king. Here's one particular verse. Variyan Esha te prashnaha. Prashna means question. Krito lokahitam nripa, O king. Atmavit samatak pungsam shrotavyadishu yakpara. Nice graphic, huh? There's a heart, and there's also the shape of an ear. And then there's sound that's going to enter that ear. Your question is glorious because it is very beneficial to all kinds of people. The answer to this question is the prime subject matter for hearing. Remember, what's that subject matter that one should always hear, chant, remember? So this Harikatha, that's the prime subject matter. And it is approved by all transcendentalists. So here's a nice little illustration showing the first 3 chapters of Canto 2. There's description of yoga processes and the universal form and creation. These are important topics in Canto 2. Another illustration. That one in the lower left, that's a cute illustration showing the universal form. That's chapter 1. In Shukadev Goswami's description, he gives a presentation on meditation on the universal form. The next, he moves to meditation upon Paramatma. That's that other petal of the lotus. And then the third is direct process of devotional service. Those are the 3 chapters of Canto 2. Meditation or worship of the universal form, meditation upon Paramatma, and executing devotional service. Regarding the duty of a man about to die, Shukadeva Goswami says that such a person always chants and hears about Lord Krishna. He then describes the method of meditating on the Lord's universal form. Now, a little, why is that the beginning place for Shukadeva Goswami's reply? The answer is given by our acharyas that if one is going to meditate on the personality of Godhead, there has to be initially, at least, for those that don't have a personal conception, a conception of seeing person within nature, seeing God within nature, because persons may not be able to see God, but they can see nature, to see God within nature. Kind of like a pantheism idea. You familiar with that term? Pantheism is to see God within nature. The trees and the sunset and the sky and the wind and the see God within nature, the mountains. Only it's kind of metaphorical language, but the rivers are his veins, the mountains are the stacks of his bones, the moon and the sun are his 2 eyes, the trees are the hairs on his body. This is seeing God within nature, pantheism. But you go further and you put the whole thing together, and it's the form of the universe is a manifestation of the potencies, material energies of the source of everything. So behind those energies is the energetic source of everything, the Supreme. In the beginning, Maharaj Parikshit asks, paraphrasing, how to live and how to not live. How not to live? Don't live your life that's devoid of Atma Tattva, Atma Tattva's knowledge of the self. Atma Tattva, the truths of the self. Don't live your life where you fail to inquire about what the real problems of life are. It's in Bhagavad Gita also, chapter 13, Bhagavad Gita. The real problems of life, not death and taxes. It's birth, age, old age, disease, and then death. Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadi. So one should inquire what the real problems are and what's the solution. And don't place your faith in temporary things as a source of happiness or protection or well-being, because they'll all come to an end. And the example is given of a sandcastle on the beach. Sometimes somebody, children or people, will go to the beach and they make a sandcastle at the beach. And the tide comes in and there goes the sandcastle, washed back to the sea. So like the sandcastle at the beach, all things in this world are temporary, whatever it may be. Empires come and empires go. And meanwhile, they're very busy building the empire. And it's not a new thing. It's not an old thing. It's an everlasting thing. Finding, investing great endeavor for well-being and happiness in the temporary. So the advice, what not to do is just become caught in the maze of material existence. That's what not to do. Here's some explanation that Prabhupada gives in his purports. So many years of one. It's in the Prahlad Maharaj's teachings as well, to his classmates in Srimad-Bhagavatam, Canto 7. But so much time per day is meant for sleep and our routine work and our eating and our commuting, and some discretionary time is remaining. If one lives for 65 years, there's a breakdown. And so many years of life are spent in these activities. So don't simply invest in the temporary. Rather, invest in the eternal. Take responsibility for the temporary, but invest in the eternal, because life is eternal and death is something that comes and it goes with repeated birth and death. These are kind of some general ideas that are expressed in the beginning parts of Canto 2, Chapter 1. Then it gives some indication of how to live. Just general principles, how to live one's life. It's live a God-centered life, for starters. Everything should be connected to the source of emanation of everything. And how to lead a God-centered life? That's a nice question. Here's a Bhagavatam answer from Canto 2, Chapter 1. Tasmat Bharata Sarvatma Bhagavan Ishvaro Hari. Here's this phrase. It comes from Canto 1. It's now again in Canto 2. Shrotavya kirtitavyasya smartavyas-chechtatabhayam. The language was a little bit different in Canto 1. Shrotavya kirtitavyasya dhyeya. Dhyeya means like meditation. And smartavya is meditation. Smarana, remembrance. Chechtatabhayam. Here's the translation. Oh, descendant of King Bharata, one who desires to be free from all miseries must hear about, glorify, and also remember the personality of Godhead, who is the Supersoul, the controller, and the savior from all miseries. So that's what we hear in the beginning of this Canto 2, Chapter 1. There are other forms of yoga besides bhakti, but even those theoretical or speculative scholars, the gyanis, or the fruitive workers, the karmis, or the yogis, they can achieve the highest perfection only if they give up their processes and take up bhakti. That's what the first Canto Bhagavatam teaches. Very strong emphasis on loving service. Bhakti meaning loving service. How to remember Krishna, how not to forget Krishna. One who gives full attention and respect to hearing Srimad-Bhagavatam achieves unflinching faith in the Supreme Lord, the giver of salvation. So here's just connecting Bhagavad Gita, since you're all a little more familiar with Bhagavad Gita. There's one verse in Bhagavad Gita that Krishna speaks twice. There's 700 verses, and one of them he speaks twice. And the one that he speaks twice begins, Manmana Bhava Madbhakto Madhyaji Mam Namaskuru. Manmana, always think of me. Bhava Madbhakto, become my devotee. Madhyaji, worship me. Mam Namaskuru, offer your namaskars, offer your obeisances to me. 4 things. So how to always think of Krishna. That's Krishna's statement in Bhagavad Gita twice. Bhagavatam is giving us the how-to. The how-to is giving full attention and respect to the Srimad-Bhagavatam. So, again, our reading groups, that they're the importance of hearing Srimad-Bhagavatam regularly with attention and respect. And by so doing, faith in the Supreme Lord grows. That's the fruit of that seed, of that sound vibration. Continuing, now we're still in chapter 1. Etan nirvidyamananam. I'm very familiar with these verses. For you, it's new, but these are very celebrated verses. Ichatam akutobayam yoginam nripanirnitam harir namanukirtanam. There's Harinama, the last line. Harir namanukirtanam. Anu means following. Harir nama anu kirtanam. Okay, constant chanting of the holy name of the Lord after the ways of the great authorities is the doubtless and fearless akutobayam, doubtless and fearless way of success for all, including those who are free of all material desires, those who are desirous of all material enjoyment, and also those who are self-satisfied by dint of transcendental knowledge. It's good for everybody. Those that have no material desires, those who have all material desires, and those that are transcendentalists and already self-satisfied. The chanting of the holy names of the Lord, right at the very beginning of instructions of Shukadev. So, what happens for those that aren't ready for that hearing and chanting and absorption like that? Is there a place for them? Yes. That's where this beginning point of meditation on the yoga system, Ashtanga yoga system, the eightfold yoga system. You may be familiar with those 8 limbs: Yama Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Dhyana, Dharana, Samadhi. Eightfold yoga system. It's right in Bhagavad Gita. And look at this, it's in Canto 2, Chapter 1 also. A beginner can use this meditation process to meditate on the Virat Rupa, the universal form. And as that meditation upon the universal form becomes matured, then it transitions from the universal form to the Paramatma form. So we're just moving on to Canto 2, Chapter 2. We just did a quick summary of Chapter 1. Chapter 2, as you see that little petal down at the bottom that has the 2 by it, Chapter 2, that's Shukadev Goswami describing the Ashtanga yoga system, the same eightfold yoga system, where instead of meditating on the universal form, they meditate on the Paramatma form. So, build a picture of within nature, there's a personal existence of God. Now, focus that personal understanding on the form of the Lord in the heart. So there's a very far out, very interesting, detailed description of Super Soul. In case you want to know what Super Soul looks like, you can find out by meditation or by reading these 5 verses from the 2nd Canto, Chapter 2. His size is 8 inches. It was not like a material measurement, but about the size of your fist or your thumb from the bottom to the size of the heart. He has 4 hands, and he has these 4 symbols in his 4 hands. His mouth is expressing happiness. His eyes are like lotus petals. He has garments, transcendental, of course, yellowish like saffron, of the Kadamba tree. And his head is bedecked with jewels. His ornaments are gold set with jewels. He has earrings that are glowing, lotus feet that have marks on them. His chest, he has a kastuba jewel engraved with a beautiful calf. Other jewels on his shoulders. His torso is garlanded with fresh flowers. And all of that's going on inside the heart, while the heart is going boom, 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 boom. You know, when they don't have an X-ray machine to see the Lord in the heart. That looks like this. But yogis can see. They have a different machine. The machine of intense, absorbed meditation. Anyway, so here's his features. And interesting graphic. Meditation is when you look at the body, you see the heart down there. There's the Paramatma. And the seat of consciousness is seeing oneself. That's the idea of the graphic. It's a Back to Godhead magazine drawing. Seeing yourself. The meditator is seeing the Lord in the heart, but they're also seeing themselves, which is far more than the body. It's the animating force within the body. And that seeing seat of consciousness is the soul. It's not, it's not what modern science says. It's not mechanistic science. You can't see the soul that way. But it's the place of perception is itself the soul. We were discussing that in the morning class too. Meditation is to concentrate one's mind on Vishnu or Krishna, and not something impersonal or something imagined or something material. I was this interrupt. There's a fascinating description of a young boy who is the son of a Risan Brahmin, and he lived in Puri when Lord Chaitanya was there. You know who is Lord Chaitanya? No. He popularized the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra, and he lived during the late 1400s, early 1500s. And he spent half of his life as a sannyasi in Jagannath Puri. And even today, the Jagannath Rath Yatra festival is participated in by many, 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 many of the followers of Lord Chaitanya. It was his, I would say, his headquarters. So when Lord Chaitanya was there was a young boy, son of a Brahmin whose name was Makaradwaj Pandit. But, a little boy, Lord Chaitanya called him Gopal. So Gopal saw one Brahmin who was very absorbed, always in chanting the name of Krishna. And he had this habit, since he would always chant, when he went to answer the call of nature, he would hold his tongue because he didn't want to make the chanting sound when he was in the toilet. So Gopal scolded him, little boy, said, "Don't you know? The holy name is pure. Purna Shuddho, Nitya Mukto. It's always pure, can't be contaminated by anything. You don't need to hold your tongue. You can chant anywhere." Lord Chaitanya overheard, and so he then nicknamed him Gopal Guru. Little boy. And Gopal Guru, in the course of his life, he became celebrated chanter of the holy name. And one of the practices that he did when chanting was called Trataka. Trataka. Trataka is where, along with your tongue and your ear, your eye is seeing the mantra. He had it, one of his followers had the mantra carved in stone, and he would sit in front of a stone, not in front of a deity, but in front of the mantra carved in stone, and he would chant the mantra with his eyes seeing the name. You know, sometimes people write the name along as saying the name, little books, and they write the mantra so many times. So there is a Trataka process where this is something that I learned when I was in college before I knew the Hare Krishna mantra chanting, candle meditation. That's a type of Trataka also, where you use your eyes to help make the mind peaceful. Focus on one thing. Sometimes it's a mandala, geometric pattern, or something. A spot on the wall. So candle flame is common Trataka. So here, the Bhagavatam is teaching not just some light or some material object, Trataka. Meditate on the void. Meditate on the form of the personality of Godhead. That's Paramatma within the heart. Shukadeva Goswami says, even though I have described to you other paths of meditation, the most auspicious path for those suffering in this material world is that which produces prema to the Lord, or the practice of sadhana bhakti. And other paths, there are steps leading to that. Loving service to the Supreme Lord. That's prema bhakti. Here's another celebrated verse. This is from Rupa Goswami's teachings, where the definition of bhakti is given. This isn't a Bhagavatam verse, it's about what the Bhagavatam is speaking. When transcendental devotional service, by which love for Krishna is attained, is executed by the senses, it is called sadhana bhakti, or regulative discharge of devotional service, kind of like a practice. Such devotion eternally exists within the heart of every living entity. The awakening of this eternal devotion is the potentiality of devotional service and practice. The practice of chanting, the practice of hearing, the practice of worshiping, the practices of sadhana bhakti, it's meant to awaken that dormant, already existing in a seed-like form, dormant love for Krishna. And done carefully, it awakens that love for Krishna. There are two main benefits that come from practice or sadhana bhakti. These two things are the polluted aim of life becomes purified, and attainment of the Lord's lotus feet. So unwanted things become eliminated, wanted things become awakened. So now we're ready for chapter 3. That's this third petal over there on the right side. You see that young Brahmin boy making offerings to the deity form. Shukadeva Goswami then describes the path of worshipping demigods and recommends everyone to worship Krishna, whether he be full of desires or desireless. Another celebrated verse, often quoted verse, akama sarvakamova, one who has no desire, one who has all desire, moksha kama, one who has desire for liberation. Udhara di, di means intelligence, and udhara means broad. a person who has broader intelligence, whether he be one of these three, no desire, all desire, desire for liberation, must by all means worship the Supreme Whole Personality of Godhead. Tivra Bhakti. Tivra means strong, very determined. Tivra Bhakti. Okay, so we're going to try to wrap up chapter 3. One of the questions that Maharaj Parikshit asked is, how should I prepare myself to leave this world? What's the duty of a person who's about to die? What's the preparation program? Both by the rising and setting, the sun decreases the duration of life of everyone, except one who utilizes time by discussing topics of the all-good personality of Godhead. It looks like the sun is setting over there, not rising. But when the sun sets, it takes away the 1 day's worth of life. But for those who are engaged in the spiritual activities of hearing and chanting, they're 1 day closer to eternal life. What is the value of prolonged life which is wasted, inexperienced by years in this world? Better a moment of full consciousness, because that gives one a start in searching after his supreme interest. Now, that's from the first chapter. And the verse following this one, from the first chapter, the saintly king Katvanga, after being informed that the duration of his life would be only a moment more, at once he freed himself from all material activities and took shelter of the supreme safety, the personality of Godhead. So Katvanga, he had done some celebrated work, and he was given any benediction you want. He wanted to know, how long am I going to live? You're going to die in the next moment. And so he let go of all the temporary, something like Bhishma Dev. He let go of the temporary and focused his mind on the personality of Godhead. So if you can do that in a moment, good for you. But for the rest of us, it takes some practice and cultivation of absorption in the spiritual purpose of life. So carrying on with chapter 3. After hearing this kind of summary, there's a person, Shonaka, I should back up. Going back to Canto 1. After Shukadeva Goswami spoke the whole of Srimad-Bhagavatam to the king, there were many people in the audience, and one of those persons was Sutta. Sutta was the son of one of the foremost disciples of Vyasadeva. Vyasadeva had many disciples. One of them was Ramaharshan, who he taught all of the Puranas and entrusted the Puranas to Ramaharshan. Sutta was his son. Sutta means like a narrator, a bard, kind of a service. So Sutta is being asked by many sages to retell what he heard from Shukadeva when he narrated to the king. So Shaunaka is a disciple of Bhrigu Muni, very elderly, very learned, but he's looking up to Sutta because he heard from Shukadeva Goswami directly. So here we go. What further questions did the king ask after he heard these first 3 chapters? So he heard some more chapters. And there's questions and answers, because that's the format of the Bhagavatam. It's the format of all the Vedas. Certainly all the Puranas. But all of the Vedas also follow that question-answer format. So Parikshit asks about, of all things, he asks about creation. He's about to die, and he's asking about creation. Very interesting. And so Shukadev Goswami, that extra pedal over there on the right side, those are the other chapters. We're not going to cover all those chapters. Don't worry, we won't have time. But Shukadev prays for empowerment to give proper response. And he describes the process of creation as a pastime, Lord Vishnu's pastime. And he offers prayers to the Supreme Lord for his mercy and the ability to express this properly. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto the all-auspicious Lord Krishna, about whom glorification, remembrances, audience, prayers, hearing, and worship can at once cleanse the effects of all sins of the performer. It's a beautiful prayer. So before he begins answering, he's praying to the Lord for this capacity to give proper response. And in this section, which comes tomorrow, Narada, Lord Brahma, and the 4 seed verses, that's what it's called. So the rest of Canto 2 is going to be discussed tomorrow. So the whole purpose of this is to give, a common word is like an overview or an executive summary, or here the word is being used, a flow of the subject matter. And then those that are involved in these Srimad-Bhagavatam reading groups, they're going through it slowly. And I'll share a few things. I know that purification is going on because the sound vibration is purifying. It has that effect. It makes the heart clear and clean. And I know that the previous acharyas will be very pleased by this activity. And along with, here's an additional point, along with chanting, which is specifically meant to make the heart clean and awaken bhakti, the Bhagavatam gives direction to the activities of life. I mean, the overall is Krishna is to appear. Not like he's in a box and you have to open up the box. He's there from the very beginning. But the palpable sense of the presence of Krishna in the pages of Srimad-Bhagavatam unfolds as you read it. And then you realize, wow, I've gotten this great fortune of coming in contact with the Supreme Pure. And I'm feeling purified by contact with the Supreme Pure. And it feels good. And discussing the topics. So as we're having these classes here in Naperville, invariably, one or more of the questions is, in our reading group we're discussing this, in our reading group we're discussing that, could you connect this with that statement over there, and getting the big picture. Because there's a very safe assumption that the persons who are participating, there's piety. If they didn't have piety, they'd be doing something else. However, in addition to piety, there's not necessarily a great deal of clarity about the personality of Godhead. There's an idea that there's some Supreme, and we look up to the Supreme and we worship the Supreme. But a relationship is far more detailed. far more detailed. Just like, those of you that are married. Getting to, liking somebody and living with somebody is different. Like, kids going to college. If you have a roommate, having a friend over there and living with somebody as a roommate, it's different. Not the same. So having an intimate relationship with Krishna, a very personal, loving, serving relationship with Krishna, it awakens naturally just by hearing. A nice example, Rukmini. She hadn't met Krishna, but she heard about Krishna. And she heard about Krishna from Narada Muni. And when she heard about Krishna from Narada Muni, it was like, wow, I want to marry Krishna. She hadn't met him yet, but just what she heard about him, she gave her heart to him. And Mary Shishupal, forget it. Krishna, rescue me. So she just heard. And there's many other examples. Here's another, and I really like this one example. From the Bhagavatam 10th canto. Muchukunda. You heard about Muchukunda? Muchukunda was a king, a contemporary of Krishna. A very powerful, very, very powerful king. So powerful that the demigods invited him to come and assist them with a battle against the demons. So he did. And he fought non-stop, day and night, for months. And finally, Kartikeya came to the rescue, and he took over as being the commander-in-chief, and Muchukunda was given a break. So they said, what would you like as a benediction? He said, I'd like to be able to sleep. I'm really tired. And if somebody wakes me up, that they should burst into flames. So the demigods won't come and ask them again, come on, help again. He wanted that benediction, so they gave him the benediction. So he went to take rest for a long time. But prior to this, he had heard about Krishna. He heard about Krishna from Gargamuni. You know Gargamuni. Gargamuni was the one that gave Krishna his name. Great sage in Mathura. The name-giving ceremony for Krishna and Balaram was performed by Gargamuni. So Gargamuni was like a celebrated astrologer. So Muchukunda had Gargamuni look at his chart. He had privileges. He was like a royal person. So Gargamuni said, whoa, you're going to meet the personality of Godhead. And here's what he looked like. He just heard. And just from hearing, like Rukmini, a different relationship, obviously, but he developed a lot of fascination for Krishna, but he had never seen him. So when he was asleep in the cave, and Krishna purposefully brought Kalyavana to the cave, and Kalyavana kicked Muchukunda. He thought it was Krishna who had fallen asleep. Muchukunda opened his eyes, and immediately fire came from his eyes and crisped to a pile of ashes Kalyavana. And then Muchukunda had been deep asleep for a long time, and he saw this bright light in the cave and wondered, who is this? So he asked, and he said, I'm the one that you heard about from Gargamuni. I'm Krishna, the son of Vasudeva. Whoa. And then he offered beautiful prayers. But so what the point is, giving these different examples, just by hearing about Krishna, we may not be elevated like Muchukunda or Rukmini, but just by hearing about Krishna, as those who read the Bhagavatam together are hearing about Krishna, there's a cleansing and an attraction for Krishna. A cleansing of material and attraction for the spiritual aspects of Krishna. To know who he is really. Not just a notion, but a personal relationship. That's the fruit of that tree. The ripened fruit of that tree is a loving relationship with Krishna. Just by hearing about him, then in turn doing services for him. And services for him means just what you do every day. You cook, you clean, you go shopping, you take care of your family members, you do this and you do that. And all those things done in the mood of service to Krishna. Awakens just from reading Srimad-Bhagavatam and discussing the topics. Harikatha. It's magic. Spiritual potency in those messages. Okay, so that's a little summary. And tomorrow we'll move on to the rest of Canto 2, Chapter 2. So let's see if there's some discussion.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. You mentioned about chanting of the holy name is for everybody, for people who are desiring of material enjoyment and who do not. And so is Srimad-Bhagavatam sets, the books. So my question is, some of us, while receiving Srimad-Bhagavatam books, we tend to judge ourselves, saying that we're not in that plane yet, or we're not very disciplined yet, or I might not read those books. So I do not want to disrespect the books by keeping them home. If you're not worshipping the books, or if you're not treating them the way they should be, so could you please advise us?
Persons who say like that? Yeah, sure.
Yeah, because in a good intention, because they do not want to do something which should not be. So can you please advise us as to how not to judge ourselves and still receive the books?
How to handle those kinds of, you can say, wholesome, respectful wishes. There's many things. I'm looking at this nice picture of Radha and Krishna that you have on the wall. So supposing somebody way over on this end, from where you're sitting, over on this end is someone who's completely pure. And way over on this end is someone who's not. And there's a whole lot of other people in between, whole spectrum in between people. So only people who are really pure should see that, because otherwise they might disrespect. Or there's a certain breaking point where a bell rings and then they can see it. And the persons that are way over there, they shouldn't. Or let's say prasadam. Everyone, only people who are fully purified should take prasadam, because otherwise they may disrespect prasadam. The mercy manifestations of Krishna in this world are for everyone. It's going to be received differently, but it's beneficial for everyone. Our disciplic succession, and in even more recent times, since the printing press, that's like, the late 1800s and the early 1900s is when printing presses really started going, and it was offset printing, and now it's all kinds of other things. Along with the proliferation of non-devotional literatures, without mentioning the range of the types of those literatures, there's devotional literatures. And those devotional literatures are purifying for everybody. And the non-devotional literatures are contaminating for everybody. So we put the purifying literatures into the marketplace where anybody and everybody. I'll give a couple of examples. In America, there's a very popular Bible publisher called Gideon. Gideon Bible is gifted in almost all motels. When you go into check in your motel room sometime, you can open up the drawer and see inside, commonly, not everywhere, but commonly is a Bible. It's Gideon's Bible. And it's for everybody. Good, bad, and in between. And Bhagavad Gita. So now there's a practice in ISKCON, Motel Gita. That people donate, and they're keeping track of how many, and it's a small fraction of Gideon's distribution of the Bibles in the world today, not just in America, all over the world, different languages, etc. It's for everybody. There's Bhagavad Gita is for everybody, the Bhagavatam is for everybody, the holy name is for everybody. The manifestation of Krishna in this dark age of Kali are for everybody. Now, not everybody should worship a deity form of the Lord, but everyone can take the name of the Lord and see pictures of Krishna and the message of Krishna. Everyone. Just like the verse we cited. Akama, sarvakamova, sarvakama. Moksha kama, udaradi, tivrena bhakti yogena. So the message of the Bhagavatam is for that whole spectrum. So if that one wants to be respectful, that's good. That's very wholesome. And supposing I'm not there yet, I'm not way over on this end of the spectrum yet. So take that which will, when you contact the Supreme Pure, you become pure. So be respectful to the Supreme Pure. And even if you're not there yet, like everybody, most of us at least, we're not there yet. We're not in that. So it says in the scripture itself, just by keeping Bhagavatam on your shelf, your home becomes sanctified. What to speak of if you offer respects to it from time to time? What to speak of if you open it and read some lines? What to speak of? And you can keep going. But just bringing Krishna into your home, it's sanctifying. A home that's without Krishna it's a shell. It's a house. It's a structure, but it's not. The spiritual life is missing. So, put spiritual life in the home. And well, I still feel uncomfortable. Well, our authorities, those advanced souls, are encouraging us this way. Please trust them. They'll be able to, give you the path to get to the place where you're sufficiently qualified to feel comfortable. Follow them.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Okay. Something else? We have some online questions. At any time, those of you that are with us, you can add something if you like. Ah.
There are 3 questions from Radha Kunjabihari Prabhu. In yesterday's class, you mentioned that Srimad-Bhagavatam is present in the heavenly planets and in the spiritual planets too, except the number of verses are many more. First question is the spirit soul which in the spiritual planets aware of Srimad-Bhagavatam intrinsically?
The form is glorification of the Supreme Lord. And how that it's just like, the Vedas emanate from Narayana or Krishna, and they're eternal. Just as the spiritual world is eternal, the knowledge is eternal. Although this is history of events in this world, the knowledge is eternal. Now, how it registers in the seat of their consciousness about the messages of Srimad-Bhagavatam, I cannot say. But if you reach the spiritual world, send me back a text message and tell me what it's like, how they're reading Srimad-Bhagavatam.
The second question from Radha Kunjabihari Prabhu is, if not, is there a spiritual master who gives this message to the spirit soul in the spiritual world?
Next question.
I'm wondering if it's somewhat related. If the message of Srimad Bhagavatam the same as in the material world?
I've already answered that.
And the next question is from Kishore Prabhu. He's outside with the children. How could it be possible for someone to hear and chant at his last moments of life if the person did not practice it?
Not very likely. It's possible, but highly unlikely. What's likely is what your consciousness has been invested throughout life. That's where the mind will go. So the opportunity to have the mind go to transcendence is the fruit of cultivation of transcendence during lifetime. Then the mind is likely to go there. The other is not likely.
This question is from Sanjay Prabhu. Is there more than one kind of universal form description in Srimad-Bhagavatam?
Oh, yes.
And why is it important for us to know them as devotees?
Because it's a feature of Krishna, and we're in the universe. And the way that, here's Sadhuputa's way. The way that we regard the universe has a profound impact on how we view ourselves, because we're within the universe. If you don't see the universe as connected with the personality of Godhead, then chances are one will think it's up for grabs. It's, let me make it mine, let me exploit it or enjoy it or something, without proper regard for its the universe or the creation's connection with the source. So it's important for us because we live in the universe. How do we relate to the universe? In a God-conscious way.
This question is from Govinda Mohini Mataji. We heard that there is a dormant seed of Krishna Prema in all living entities. And also we get a seed, Bhaktilata Bija, from the spiritual master during initiation. How are they related?
That's a question I've pondered on again and again. And it depends on how one sees that seed that one receives from the spiritual master. If you consider the seed that one receives from the spiritual master as it just what didn't exist there before, then it seems like a contradiction. However, if you perceive or understand the seed that one received from a spiritual master is the awakening of that which is already there, then it's not placing something that isn't already there. It's just awakening something that's already there. Which is already there is love of God, but it's dormant. There's a nice purport in Canto 6, Chapter 1, verse something like 15, where this understanding is explained. The seed of devotional service is the tendency to serve, and the tendency to serve is awakened. That's the seed. Then that tendency to serve, when it matures, becomes Krishna prema, or loving service. And through association with the spiritual master who has such propensity to serve the Supreme Lord, the service to the Supreme Lord propensity in the disciple awakens.
This question is from Sanchari. I'm thinking about the length of time the Bhagavatam was originally spoken. It took 7 days. Was it the full day and night that they spoke, or
Yes.
did they take breaks?
Non-stop.
And this question
They
is...
they not only didn't take a nap, they didn't take a snack. They probably took some water, but no eating, no sleeping, non-stop.
This question, 2 questions from Amara Mataji. Why is the universal form has been described in different ways in different places like Bhagavad Gita and different cantos of Srimad-Bhagavatam?
Because different persons have a lens through which they see the same object. A classic example of this is the description when Krishna enters the wrestling arena of Kamsa. There's 11 different persons that see him in completely different ways. Because of their relationship with him, it starts with the Chandra and Mushtaka saw him as a thunderbolt. And Kamsa saw him as death personified. And the elder ladies saw him as a darling boy. And the residents of Vrindavan, who were also there for that festival, they saw him as their dear friend. And the young girls saw him as Cupid personified. And so they each saw him different ways according to their heart. So just as Krishna was seen in different ways when entering into the wrestling arena, so also there's this universal form has multi features and facets, and one will see according to one's heart and according to what Krishna reveals.
Second question from Amara Mataji. How to understand the presence of Paramatma with all the paraphernalia and 8-inch size present in our hearts? Surely it's not gross materialistic understanding.
Correct.
Can you kindly comment on this?
Yes, that's the comment. It's the matter is a reflection of spirit. Just like in a mirror, there's a reflection of an object. That's the classic. Here's an apple, here's a mirror, and in the mirror you see a reflection of the apple. But there's no substance in the apple. There's substance in the reflection of the apple. So this world is a reflection of the spiritual world. In the spiritual world, there's substance. In the material world, there's reflection, where there's no substance, but it looks like there's substance. But there's no substance. It's ephemeral, it's in time, it's flickering and fleeting, and poof, it's gone. There's no substance. But in the spiritual realm, there's substance. And so these descriptions are of the spiritual realm. And here, it's not of the material, ornaments or cloth or whatever, the descriptions of Supersoul, the garland. It's not, go out in your garden, pick some nice flowers. It's got a beautiful garden. Pick some nice flowers, make a garland, and then they wilt. This is a reflection of the spiritual world.
This next question is from Madhavi Sundari Mataji from Bangalore. My question is about hearing some topics like Krishna's pastimes are very interesting to hear, but the philosophical topics are very difficult to understand. Can you please kindly help me to hear those topics properly and assimilate?
Well, yeah. Just continue even if you don't understand. I mean, that's Prabhupada's instruction. And it's not a cognitive experience, it's a spiritual experience. So the understanding isn't by, your college intelligence, where you get trained up how to discern things with using your material intelligence. It's not that kind of a understanding anyway. Rather, it's a spiritual experience and a spiritual understanding. And as your consciousness becomes spiritualized, then you'll start to understand. So until your consciousness becomes spiritualized, you continue to hear, and it'll become spiritualized. That is, the cleansing of the coverings are removed, and the awakening of the dormant spiritual consciousness becomes awakened.
This question is from Mahati Kirti Mataji. King Katvanga could surrender to Krishna in a moment.
Yeah.
What does it really mean to surrender to Krishna?
What does it really mean? It means to surrender to Krishna. That's what it really means. You take full shelter of him. You leave aside temporary, and you take shelter of the eternal.
So,
someone asked this question about taking shelter of the holy name, and so I dedicated a whole class to that topic. So Mahati Kirti, you can find out about that class on what does it mean to take shelter of the holy name. And then you can just take out holy name and insert Krishna. Take shelter of Krishna. You have an understanding of what it means. What does it really mean?
So the rest of the question is, I think I'm surrendering to Krishna sometimes, but not always.
Yeah, that's most of us.
And I feel I'm not sincere all the time, or I feel I'm not doing enough. How
Okay.
to get to that surrendering state?
Welcome to the club. The I'm Not There Yet club. We discussed this at length 3 times in this past Memorial Day weekend retreat. So rather than having me say it again, the 3 times that we spoke about it, please listen to those recordings. It's very recent. And exactly on the topic that you're asking, we discussed it 3 times.
This question is from Dharmesh Prabhu, who is Sanjay Prabhu's Bhakti Vriksha member. if we worship only the universal form, is that fine? At many places it is mentioned that we should be concentrating on the original form.
Yes. If you read carefully, I'm sure you read carefully. As you read carefully, you'll find that the Shukadev Goswami very gently takes the reader, or Maharaj Pariksit in this case, the audience, from universal form to Paramatma to Bhagavan. That means you let go, you learn to concentrate, and then you take that concentration power and transfer it to Paramatma and transfer that to Bhagavan, the personal feature.
This question is from Leela Smaran Prabhu. Shubhra Mataji. How do I overcome attitude of arrogance and pride?
Well, as I said in this morning's class, I picked it up when we were in Detroit. These two are from Detroit. For the time being, whenever people ask the how-to question, I'm going to give the same answer. And the answer is, by sadhu sangha. And then you can unpack, what does sadhu sangha mean? Sadhu sangha means serving. Sangha is not just you hang out with, but sangha means service to those who are sadhu. Those who are attached to sat are sadhu. You serve them, and serve them starting with hearing and chanting and remembering and doing other practical things together, where what is important for a sadhu is that Krishna is at the center, so you put Krishna at the center in all the things that you do. And there's, more, because we discussed this when we were in Detroit also, at length. Okay?
Visalaksha Prabhu's question. Is there any spiritual reasons to call the first and second canto as the lotus feet of Lord Krishna compared to the other cantos?
The explanation that Srila Prabhupada gives in the second canto is that just as with worship of the deity form of the Lord, it's recommended that you begin meditation on the deity form of the Lord starting at the feet. So the first two cantos are at the feet. And at the feet carries with it a mood, the mood of humble submission. When you're at the feet of someone, there's humble submission. So the mood that's inculcated through cantos 1 and 2 are this mood of humble submission unto Krishna. That's the reason. Okay, anything else in the room? This real girl is really curious one. Yeah, go ahead.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Major part of Bhagavatam, not major part, but lot of about the creation, the universal form.
Yeah.
That means it's important topic to understand. But I'm not able to get it because Parikshit Maharaj, he has very limited time, and at that time he is asking this question. So, it's like very detailed philosophical topics to discuss and understand.
Here's another example. Another example is when in third canto, when Vidura for the first time meets Maitreya, that's his question. Maitreya is ready to respond to any questions, and he asks him about creation. It's puzzling. I mean, there's anything you could ask about it, but that's the entry point. It has to do, once again, with where we are. We're in the universe. We're in the cosmic manifestation. And to understand the connection of the cosmic manifestation with the source is important. So please explain it. That's not the way, the phraseology of the question, but, he considers that the creation is one of the Lord's pastimes. Not just his pastimes in Vrindavan are pastimes, but the pastime of creation is a pastime. So he knows he's a king. He knows, the philosophy, but he wants to hear the connection of everything with the source of emanation from this realized person, Shukadev. Because it's not just going to get information, he's going to get realization. When you have that realization, you're secure. You have shelter, you're fixed in the place of shelter of the personality of Godhead. Say it negatively. If you don't have that understanding of the connection of all things with the source of emanation, here comes, some wind blowing this way, some misfortune, and you're in a tizzy. And it happens. Pious people become bewildered when some misfortune comes, because their connection with the personality of Godhead isn't secure. Faith, yes. Piety, yes. Understanding, well, so. It's also for us to ask such question, because it's important to us. A king is thinking of the welfare of his citizens, not just himself. That's his, qualification. An exalted person doesn't just think about themselves. They think about the welfare of others. So it's important for people to know that. So he's asking.
Thank you so much, Manas. My other quick question, maybe first canto, Prabhupada called it as a creation. This.
Yeah, you want to know why he called it? I don't know. I've not seen, but for our newer people, Prabhupada gave it a title, a heading or label for each of the 12 cantos. And this one is called Creation. Now I have some idea, but I don't know. Okay, anything? Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Okay. Who gets the book? Who's this for? Your friends. My compliments to you for keeping your daughter very engaged. Energetic little girl, you did very well with helping. It says Krishna Matir Astu, which means may you always remember Krishna. Krishna Matir. Another.
And Rupamate Rosh, the daughter Roshni, she got inspired to start reading from today.
Ah,
So it said for her.
how did that happen? Somebody twisted your arm? You finished your exams? Or what? Have you just, you're embarking on college next, right?
No, I thought you.
2 more?
Yeah.
Really? You're very poised.
Oh.
But full.